At Thanksgiving dinner, I got a message from a stranger. Don't eat anything. Trust me. I was shocked. My daughter-in-law insisted I eat, but I walked away. The next day, what I discovered about my so-called illnesses sent the police into a panic. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Geraldine, and I'm 65 years old. I never thought a simple text message would save my life. It happened on Thanksgiving Day, of all days. I was sitting at my son Marcus's dining table, watching my daughter-in-law Fallon fuss over the turkey like it was the most important thing in the world. The smell of sage and rosemary filled the air, and everything looked perfect. Too perfect, I realize now. "Mom, you barely touched your plate," Marcus said, glancing at me with that worried look he'd been giving me more and more lately. "Fallon made your favorite stuffing." I smiled and nodded, though honestly, I hadn't felt much of an appetite in months. Food just didn't taste the same anymore. Nothing did, really. My doctor kept telling me it was normal for someone my age, especially with all the health issues I'd been having lately. Fallon leaned over and spooned another helping of stuffing onto my plate. "Geraldine, you need to eat more. Look how thin you've gotten." Her voice was sweet, caring even, but something about the way she watched me made my stomach turn. "I made this batch special, just the way you like it." I picked up my fork, but before I could take a bite, my phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. "Don't eat anything. Trust me." My hand froze halfway to my mouth. I looked around the table, but Marcus was cutting more turkey for himself, and Fallon was busy serving green bean casserole. Neither of them seemed to notice anything unusual. "Don't eat anything. Trust me." The words seemed to burn into my mind. Who would send such a message? And why now? "Everything okay, Mom?" Marcus asked, noticing I'd stopped eating. "Oh, yes, dear. Just checking my phone." I quickly put it face down on the table, but my heart was racing. The fork felt heavy in my hand. Fallon appeared beside me again, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my shoulder. "Geraldine, your food is getting cold. The stuffing took me hours to make." There was something in her tone, a slight edge that made me look up at her face. She was smiling, but her eyes were intense, almost demanding. "I'm just not very hungry today," I said softly. "But you love stuffing," Fallon insisted. "Remember last month when you said it was the best you'd ever had? You even asked for the recipe." "Ah, had I said that?" Lately, I'd been having trouble remembering conversations. My doctor said it was part of getting older, that some memory loss was normal. But looking at Fallon's expectant face, I couldn't remember asking for any recipe. "Maybe I'll take some home for later," I suggested. Fallon's smile tightened. "That's not the same, Geraldine. It's Thanksgiving. We should eat together as a family." Marcus looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. "Mom, if you're not feeling well." No, I'm fine," I said quickly. The last thing I wanted was another trip to the doctor. I'd been there so many times recently, and the medications kept changing. Sometimes I felt like I was rattling when I walked. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "Leave now. You're in danger." This time my hand shook as I read it. In danger? From what? From whom? I looked around the familiar dining room, at my son and daughter-in-law, at the family photos on the walls. Everything looked normal, safe. "Who keeps texting you, Mom?" Marcus asked. "Oh, probably a wrong number," I lied, but my mind was spinning. 2 messages, both warning me not to eat, both telling me to trust them. What if they were right? "Well, put that phone away and eat," Fallon said, her voice sharper now. "I worked all day on this meal." I looked down at my plate. The stuffing did look delicious, with herbs sprinkled on top and a golden brown crust. But something about it seemed wrong. Or maybe it was just my imagination, fueled by those strange text messages. "Actually, I think I might be coming down with something," I said, pushing back from the table. "Maybe I should head home." "Mom, you just got here," Marcus protested. "And you've been feeling under the weather for months. Maybe you just need to eat something." Fallon nodded eagerly. "He's right, Geraldine. You've lost so much weight, just a few bites. But I was already standing, my purse clutched in my hand. Something deep in my gut told me to listen to those messages, as crazy as it seemed. I'm sorry, I just don't feel well. I moved toward the door, feeling their eyes on me. This is ridiculous, Fallon said, following me. You can't keep running away every time we have a family dinner. Running away? When had I done that before? I stopped and turned to look at her. What do you mean, running away? Fallon and Marcus exchanged a look. Mom, you've left early the last 3 times we've invited you over, Marcus said gently. We're worried about you. Had I? I tried to remember, but the past few months felt like a blur. There were gaps, missing pieces, like a puzzle with half the parts lost. I just need to go home, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. As I drove away, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, I kept glancing at those text messages. Don't eat anything, trust me. And then, leave now, you're in danger. Who knew I was in danger? And danger from what? Back at my small apartment, I sat on my couch and stared at my phone. Should I call the police? But what would I tell them? That someone sent me anonymous text messages telling me not to eat Thanksgiving dinner? I got up and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. Marcus was right. I had lost a lot of weight. My cheeks were hollow. My eyes seemed sunken. When had I started looking so frail? That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Fallon's face. The way she'd insisted I eat the stuffing. The way she'd watched me so intently. Around 3 in the morning, I started feeling sick. Not just nauseous, but dizzy, like the room was spinning. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up, even though I'd barely eaten anything at dinner. As I gripped the cold porcelain of the toilet, one thought kept echoing in my mind. What if those messages had saved my life? The next morning, I woke up feeling worse than I had in months. My head was pounding, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to make myself some tea, but I kept dropping the spoon, and the sound of it hitting the kitchen floor seemed to echo through my skull. I sat at my small kitchen table, wrapping my bathrobe tighter around myself, and tried to think clearly. Those text messages from yesterday kept running through my mind. Who would warn me about eating at my own son's house? And why? As I sipped my tea, memories started floating back. Not clear memories, but fragments, like pieces of a broken mirror that only showed part of the picture. There was that dinner 3 weeks ago when Fallon had made pot roast. She'd insisted I try her special gravy, and I'd felt sick for days afterward. My doctor had said it was probably a stomach bug. And the month before that, when she'd brought over homemade soup because I'd been under the weather, I remembered feeling grateful that she cared enough to cook for me. But I also remembered spending that entire night in the emergency room with what the doctors called severe digestive distress. The more I thought about it, the more a pattern seemed to emerge. I'd been getting sick after eating at Marcus and Fallon's house, or after eating food Fallon had prepared for me, but surely that was just a coincidence, wasn't it? I pulled out a notebook and started writing down what I could remember. September 15th, dinner at Marcus's house. Felt dizzy and nauseous afterward. September 28th, Fallon brought soup, ended up in the ER. October 12th, family barbecue. Couldn't keep anything down for 2 days. By the time I finished, I had a list of 8 occasions over the past 4 months where I'd eaten something Fallon had prepared and gotten sick afterward. 8 times. My hands were shaking again, but now it wasn't from whatever was making me feel so awful. It was from fear. The phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly knocked over my teacup. It was Marcus. "Mom, how are you feeling this morning?" "Not very well," I admitted. "Fallon feels terrible about last night. She thinks you might have caught something, and she's worried she didn't take good enough care of you." Fallon feels terrible? I thought about her face last night, the way she'd insisted I eat the stuffing, the edge in her voice when I'd refused. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mom." I hesitated. How could I voice what I was thinking without sounding paranoid? "Have you noticed that I've been getting sick more often lately?" There was a pause. "Well, yeah, that's why we've been so worried about you. Your doctor says it's probably just part of getting older, and with all the medications you're on." "What medications?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Mom, you're on several medications. For your blood pressure, your heart, Your memory issues. Memory issues? Marcus, I don't remember being diagnosed with memory issues. Mom. His voice was gentle, but I could hear the concern in it. We've talked about this. Doctor, Patterson put you on medication for early-stage dementia 3 months ago. You've been having trouble remembering things. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Dementia? When had this happened? I tried to think back to my last doctor's appointment, but it felt fuzzy, unclear. I don't remember that conversation, I whispered. That's exactly why Dr. Patterson is concerned, Marcus said softly. Mom, Fallon, and I have been trying to help you keep track of your medications. Sometimes you forget to take them. After Marcus hung up, I went to my medicine cabinet. Sure enough, there were several bottles I didn't remember getting. Aricept for dementia, increased dosages of my blood pressure medication. Something called Seroquel that I'd never heard of. I stared at the bottles, trying to remember when I'd gotten them, when I'd talked to Dr. Patterson about any of this. But it was like trying to grasp smoke. Had I really been forgetting so much? Was my mind really going? The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Fallon standing on my doorstep, holding what looked like a casserole dish. Geraldine, it's me, she called. I brought you some soup. You looked so pale last night. I stood there, frozen. Part of me wanted to open the door, to accept her kindness like I always had. But another part, the part that had been keeping that list of dates when I'd gotten sick, told me to keep the door locked. Thank you, dear, but I'm not feeling up to visitors right now, I called back. Oh, Geraldine, don't be silly. I'm family. Let me take care of you. I could hear the slight irritation in her voice, the same edge from last night. I really just need to rest. I'm not leaving until I know you've eaten something, Fallon said firmly. Marcus is worried sick about you. I pressed my back against the door. Why was she being so insistent? If I was sick, wouldn't it make sense to leave me alone to rest? Fallon, I appreciate you coming by, but I really can't. Geraldine, open this door right now. Her voice was different now, sharper, more demanding. You're being ridiculous. I'd never heard her speak to me like that before. Or had I? Lately, I couldn't trust my own memories. After what felt like an eternity, I heard her footsteps walking away. But when I looked out the window, I saw her standing by her car, talking on her phone. Even from a distance, I could see she was upset, gesturing with her free hand. That evening, I got another text from the unknown number. Check your pill bottles. Look at the labels carefully. This time, instead of feeling frightened, I felt almost relieved. Someone else was watching, someone who knew something was wrong. I went back to my medicine cabinet and really looked at the labels this time. The Aricept was prescribed 3 months ago. The increased blood pressure medication was from 2 months ago. The Seroquel was from 6 weeks ago. But I couldn't remember any of those appointments. I couldn't remember Dr. Patterson telling me I had dementia. I couldn't remember agreeing to take any of these medications. I picked up the bottle of Seroquel and Googled it on my phone. It was an antipsychotic medication, often used to treat severe mental illness, but it could also cause drowsiness, confusion, and memory problems. Why would Dr. Patterson prescribe this for dementia? And why couldn't I remember getting it? As I sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by pill bottles and torn between trusting my own failing memory or these mysterious text messages, one thought kept circling in my mind. What if I wasn't losing my memory naturally? What if someone was helping it along? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with the pill bottles spread out in front of me like evidence in a crime scene. By morning, I had made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. I was going to stop taking my medications. Not all of them. Not the ones I remembered taking before all of this started, but the new ones, the ones I couldn't remember getting. Those I was going to skip. If I really was losing my mind, then it wouldn't matter. But if someone was causing this, the first day without the medications was rough. I felt jittery, anxious, like I was coming down with the flu. But by the second day, something strange happened. The fog in my head started to lift, just a little. Thoughts that had been swimming just out of reach began to come into focus. I remembered things, small things at first, like where I'd put my reading glasses, or what I'd had for breakfast 3 days ago. But then bigger things started coming back too. I remembered the conversation with Dr. Patterson, but not the way Marcus had described it. I remembered being confused, asking why I needed so many new medications, and Dr. Patterson saying that Fallon had been concerned about my memory, that Fallon had been keeping track of incidents where I seemed confused or forgetful. Fallon had been there, in the doctor's office, sitting right beside me, nodding sympathetically as Dr. Patterson explained my condition. But I also remembered feeling fine before that appointment. I remembered driving myself there, having a clear conversation with the receptionist about scheduling my next checkup. I remembered being surprised when Dr. Patterson started talking about memory problems. On the third day, I got another text. Save samples of anything she gives you to eat. Hide them in your freezer. This time I didn't hesitate. I texted back, "Who are you?" The response came quickly. "Someone who cares. Someone who's been watching. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only one who's telling you the truth." I stared at that message for a long time. The only one telling me the truth. What did that say about everyone else in my life? Marcus called that afternoon. "Mom, Dr. Patterson's office called. You missed your medication pickup. Are you feeling okay?" I had to think fast. "Oh yes, I just got busy. I'll pick them up tomorrow." "Do you want me to get them for you?" Fallon offered to swing by the pharmacy. Of course she did. "No, that's okay. I need to get out anyway." "Mom, are you taking your medications regularly?" Dr. Patterson emphasized how important it is to stay on schedule. "Yes, dear, I'm taking them." The lie felt bitter in my mouth, but necessary. After I hung up, I realized how quickly Marcus had called after I'd missed the pickup, almost like someone was monitoring my prescriptions. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove to the grocery store by myself. It felt like an act of rebellion. For weeks, Fallon had been insisting that I shouldn't drive alone, that it wasn't safe given my condition. But sitting behind the wheel, I felt completely alert, completely in control. At the store, I bought small plastic containers and freezer bags. If someone was going to bring me food, I was going to be ready. I didn't have to wait long. The next day, Fallon showed up again with another casserole. "Geraldine, you look better," she said when I answered the door. But she didn't look pleased about it. She looked almost disappointed. "Thank you, dear. I've been resting." "Have you been taking your medications?" Dr. Patterson called Marcus. "He's concerned you might be having an episode." An episode. That was a new word. "I'm taking my medications," I said carefully. Fallon studied my face. "You seem different, more alert." There was something in the way she said it that made my skin crawl, like being alert was somehow wrong. "Well, I brought you some of my famous chicken and rice casserole, the one you love so much." I didn't remember ever saying I loved her chicken and rice casserole. In fact, looking at the dish in her hands, I wasn't even sure I'd ever had it before. "That's so thoughtful of you." "I'll just put it in your refrigerator and heat you up a portion right now." "Actually, I just ate," I lied. "But I'll have it for dinner tonight." Fallon's smile tightened. "Geraldine, you need to eat more regularly, especially with your medications. They work better when you've eaten." She moved toward my kitchen without being invited. I watched as she opened my refrigerator, moving things around to make room for the casserole. Her hands moved quickly, confidently, like she'd done this many times before. "There," she said, pulling out a plate. "I'm just going to heat up a small portion for you now. You really do look thin." "Fallon, I appreciate this, but I'm really not hungry." Nonsense. She was already spooning the casserole onto a plate, putting it in the microwave. "You need to keep your strength up." As the microwave hummed, I excused myself to use the bathroom. But instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into my bedroom and quickly texted the unknown number. "She's here with food. What do I do?" The response was immediate. "Pretend to eat. Hide some in a napkin. Get her to leave." When I came back to the kitchen, Fallon had the plate ready, along with a glass of water and what looked like my pills. "I brought your evening medications too. I picked them up from the pharmacy since you forgot." I hadn't forgotten. I'd deliberately not picked them up. But there they were, the same pills I'd been avoiding for 3 days. "You didn't need to do that." "Of course I did. We're family. She set the pills next to the plate. Now eat up while it's hot. I sat down at the table, my heart pounding. The casserole smelled normal, looked normal, but after 3 days of clearer thinking, I trusted my instincts more than my eyes. I took a small bite and chewed slowly, making appreciative sounds. While Fallon watched, I pretended to swallow, but actually held the food in my cheek. When she turned to get a napkin, I quickly spit it into my hand and palmed it. "This is delicious," I said, taking another pretend bite. "I'm so glad you like it. Marcus was worried you weren't eating enough." I continued the charade for several minutes, pretending to eat while actually hiding the food in napkins, which I stuffed into my robe pockets. "Now take your pills," Fallon said when I'd finished about half the plate. "I'll take them after you leave. Sometimes they make me nauseous if I take them too soon after eating." Fallon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Dr. Patterson said you should take them with food." "I know, but my stomach has been sensitive lately." We stared at each other for a moment, and I could see her calculating something behind her eyes. "Well, I suppose that's fine," she said finally. "But promise me you'll take them." "Of course." After she left, I immediately took the napkins full of food to my kitchen. My hands were shaking as I spooned the samples into the small containers I'd bought. I labeled each one with the date and put them in my freezer. Then I flushed the pills down the toilet. That night, I didn't get sick. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up nauseous or dizzy. I woke up feeling clearer than I had in weeks. And with that clarity came a terrifying realization. If someone was drugging me, if someone was making me sick on purpose, then everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. The question was, how far did this go? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? After a week of avoiding the medications and feeling clearer than I had in months, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to get the food samples tested. I'd been Googling local laboratories, trying to figure out how to get food tested for drugs without sounding like a paranoid old woman. Finally, I found a private lab about 20 miles away that did toxicology testing. I called and explained that I suspected someone might be putting something in my food. The woman on the phone was kind but professional. "Ma'am, if you suspect you're being poisoned, you should contact the police." "I need proof first," I said. "I need to know for sure." She scheduled me for the next day. I also made an appointment with a different doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, who had excellent reviews online. I needed someone who didn't know Fallon, someone who could give me an objective assessment of my health. The night before my appointments, I got another text from my mysterious helper. "Be careful, she's getting suspicious. Vary your routine." I texted back, "Who are you? Please tell me." This time the response was different. "I work at Dr. Patterson's office. I've been watching this happen to other patients. You're not the first." My blood ran cold. Other patients? How many other people was this happening to? "Can you help me?" "I'm trying. But be careful. If she realizes you're not taking the medications, she might try something more direct." I barely slept that night. The next morning, I drove to the lab first. The technician took the food samples and told me I should have results in 3 days. Then I drove to Dr. Chen's office. Dr. Chen was younger than Dr. Patterson, maybe in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She listened carefully as I explained my concerns about my memory, the medications I'd been prescribed, and the pattern of getting sick after eating certain foods. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'd like to run some blood tests. Can you tell me exactly what medications you've been taking?" I showed her the pill bottles. She frowned as she read the labels. "This is quite a cocktail," she said. "Seroquel is typically used for bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, not dementia, and this dosage of Aricept is higher than I would normally prescribe for someone your age. Dr. Patterson said I had early-stage dementia. When was your last cognitive assessment?" I tried to remember. I'm not sure we ever did a formal assessment." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "A diagnosis of dementia requires extensive testing, memory issues, cognitive assessments, sometimes brain imaging. You can't diagnose dementia based on a family member's observations alone." Family members' observations. Fallon's observations. Dr. Chen had me do some simple cognitive tests right there in the office. I remembered sequences of numbers, identified pictures, answered questions about current events. When we finished, she looked puzzled. "Mrs. Hartwell, your cognitive function appears completely normal. In fact, your scores are above average for someone your age." I felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that my mind was fine. Terror at what that meant about everything else. "Doctor, if I were being given medications that could cause confusion and memory problems, how would that affect me?" She leaned back in her chair. "Are you asking hypothetically?" "No, I'm asking because I think someone might be drugging me." Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Hartwell, the combination of medications you've been prescribed could definitely cause confusion, memory problems, and physical symptoms like nausea and dizziness, especially if they were being given to someone who didn't actually need them." What should I do?" "First, we're going to run comprehensive blood tests to see what's actually in your system. Then, depending on what we find, we may need to contact the authorities." The blood tests took 20 minutes. Dr. Chen said she'd put a rush on them and I should have results by tomorrow. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Marcus. "Mom, Dr. Patterson is really concerned. He says you haven't been picking up your prescriptions and you missed your last appointment." I hadn't made any appointment with Dr. Patterson. "I've been busy, dear." "Mom, this isn't like you. Fallon thinks you might be having another episode." Another episode. There was that phrase again. What kind of episode? There was a pause. "You know, like last month when you forgot how to get home from the grocery store." I had no memory of that happening. "Marcus, I don't remember that." "That's exactly the problem, Mom. Look, we're coming over tonight to check on you." My heart started racing. "That's not necessary. We'll be there around 7. Fallon's making your favorite soup." After he hung up, I immediately texted my unknown contact. "They're coming over tonight with food. What do I do?" "Don't be there. Go somewhere public. Stay away until tomorrow." But where could I go? I was 65 years old, and most of my friends had moved away or passed on. I thought about checking into a hotel, but that seemed extreme. Then I remembered my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Not Dr. Chen, but Helen Chen, an elderly Chinese woman who lived in the apartment next door. We'd chatted a few times in the hallway, and she'd always been kind. I knocked on her door around 5 o'clock. "Geraldine, is everything okay, dear?" I took a deep breath. "Helen, this is going to sound strange, but could I possibly stay at your place tonight? I'm having some family troubles." Helen didn't ask questions. She just opened her door wider and welcomed me in. At 7:15, I heard voices in the hallway outside my apartment. Marcus and Fallon had arrived. I could hear Fallon's voice, sharp with irritation. "Where could she be? Her car is here. Maybe she went for a walk," Marcus suggested. "At this hour? With her condition?" They stayed for over an hour, and I could hear Fallon getting more and more agitated. Finally, they left, but not before I heard Fallon on the phone. "She's not here." "No, her car is in the parking lot. I think she might be having a serious episode. Yes, we might need to consider more drastic measures." More drastic measures. What did that mean? The next morning, Dr. Chen called with my blood test results. "Mrs. Hartwell, you need to come in immediately, and I think you should consider calling the police." "What did you find?" "Your blood shows high levels of Seroquel, Aricept, and something called risperidone, which isn't even on your prescription list. But more concerning, we found traces of crushed sleeping pills and what appears to be ground-up Benadryl." My legs gave out, and I had to sit down. "What does that mean?" "It means someone has been drugging you with a combination of medications that would cause exactly the symptoms you've been experiencing: confusion, memory loss, dizziness, nausea. Mrs. Hartwell, the levels in your blood are dangerous. If this had continued much longer, you could have suffered permanent damage or worse. Or worse, in an elderly person, this combination of drugs could cause organ failure, seizures, even death. Whoever is doing this isn't just trying to confuse you. They're slowly killing you." I hung up the phone with shaking hands. The lab called an hour later with the food test results. The casserole samples contained crushed Seroquel, risperidone, and several over-the-counter sleep aids. Someone had been systematically poisoning me for months. And that someone was my daughter-in-law. But why? Why would Fallon want to hurt me? What did she gain by making me sick? By making me seem like I was losing my mind? The answer came in another text from my mysterious helper. "Check your will. Check your bank accounts. She has power of attorney. Power of attorney? I rushed to my file cabinet and pulled out my legal documents. There it was, a power of attorney form I didn't remember signing, dated 3 months ago. It gave Fallon complete control over my finances and medical decisions if I was deemed mentally incompetent. And according to Dr. Patterson's records, I was already being treated for dementia. Fallon wasn't just trying to make me sick. She was trying to gain control of everything I owned. And if I died in the process, well, that would just make things easier for her. I called Dr. Chen back immediately. Doctor, I need you to contact the police. I have proof that someone has been poisoning me. Detective Maria Santos arrived at my apartment 2 hours after Dr. Chen's call to the police. She was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and tired eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She sat at my kitchen table, carefully examining the food samples, the pill bottles, and the medical records I'd gathered. Mrs. Hartwell, these are serious allegations, she said, looking up from the toxicology reports. Attempted murder, fraud, elder abuse. We're talking about felony charges. I know it sounds crazy, I said, my hands trembling as I poured her coffee. My own daughter-in-law trying to kill me. Unfortunately, it's not as crazy as you might think. We see this more often than people realize. Family members who stand to inherit money, who get tired of caring for elderly relatives. She paused, studying my face. The question is, are you prepared for what comes next? This is going to tear your family apart. I thought about Marcus, about how he'd defended Fallon, how he'd believed every lie she'd told about my failing health. Detective, my family is already torn apart. I just didn't realize it until now. Detective Santos nodded. We're going to need to move carefully. We'll need search warrants for their home, for Dr. Patterson's office. We'll need to interview everyone involved. What about the person who's been texting me? They said they work at Dr. Patterson's office. We'll find out who that is. They're probably going to be a key witness. That evening, Detective Santos called. Mrs. Hartwell, we've made some discoveries. Dr. Patterson is cooperating fully. It turns out he's been concerned about some irregularities in patient files, but he didn't realize the scope until today. What kind of irregularities? Patients being prescribed medications based on family reports of symptoms the patients don't actually have. Mysterious power of attorney documents. Several elderly patients who've gotten suddenly worse after family members started helping with their care. My stomach turned. How many others? We're still investigating, but at least 6 that we know of. Mrs. Hartwell, your daughter-in-law appears to have been running a systematic scheme to gain control of elderly people's assets. But why me? I'm not wealthy. You own your apartment. You have savings, a decent pension. To someone deeply in debt, that might look like a fortune. Debt. That explained so much. I remembered Marcus mentioning that Fallon had been stressed about money lately, that her credit cards were maxed out. The next morning, Marcus called. His voice was strained, confused. Mom, the police came to our house yesterday. They had a search warrant. They took Fallon's computer, some of her papers. They said someone accused her of poisoning you. I closed my eyes. This was the conversation I'd been dreading. Marcus, we need to talk. Can you come over? Alone? Mom, this is insane. Fallon loves you. She's been taking care of you. Please, just come over. Alone. An hour later, Marcus sat across from me at the same kitchen table where Detective Santos had laid out the evidence. He looked older somehow, like he'd aged years in the past few days. Marcus, I need you to look at something. I showed him the toxicology reports, the food test results, the power of attorney I'd never signed. He stared at the papers, his face growing pale. This can't be right. The police found crushed pills in her computer desk, receipts for medications she was buying under false names. They found research on how to induce dementia symptoms. Marcus put his head in his hands. But she was helping you. She was cooking for you, bringing you medicine. She was poisoning me, Marcus. For months. She was slowly killing me to get control of my money. No. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, no. Fallon wouldn't. She loves our family. I reached across the table and took his hand. Honey, I know this is hard to believe. I didn't want to believe it either. But she was so concerned about you. She kept saying we needed to get you more help, maybe find a care facility. The pieces were falling into place. A care facility where she would have complete control as my power of attorney. Marcus pulled his hand away, stood up, and started pacing. This doesn't make sense. We're not poor, but we're not rich either. Why would she? Detective Santos says you have significant debt, credit cards, loans. Marcus stopped pacing. His silence told me everything. She told me those were old debts from before we got married, he said finally. She said they were almost paid off. Marcus, how much debt? He sat back down heavily. Over $100,000. But she said she had it under control. I felt a wave of sadness for my son. He'd been manipulated just as much as I had, just in a different way. That afternoon, Detective Santos called again. Mrs. Hartwell, we've arrested your daughter-in-law. She's being charged with attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. What happens now? She'll have a bail hearing, but given the severity of the charges and the evidence we have, I doubt she'll be released. We also found evidence linking her to the other cases. This is going to be a big case. And Dr. Patterson? He's cooperating fully. It appears he was being deceived as well. Your daughter-in-law is very convincing. She had fake documentation, false reports of incidents. She even had other people calling his office pretending to be concerned neighbors. The person who'd been texting me turned out to be Nancy Williams, a nurse at Dr. Patterson's office who'd noticed the pattern of elderly patients suddenly developing severe symptoms after family members started helping with their care. She'd been quietly documenting everything, trying to figure out how to report it without solid proof. I was terrified no one would believe me, she told me when we met. These families seemed so caring, so concerned. But the medications didn't make sense. The symptoms didn't add up. That evening, Marcus came back to my apartment. This time, he looked broken. The police showed me everything, he said quietly. The fake power of attorney, the research on dementia symptoms, even a timeline she'd created for when you'd be declared incompetent. I went to sit beside him on the couch. Marcus, I'm so sorry. She was planning to have you institutionalized within 6 months. Then she was going to sell your apartment, cash out your retirement accounts. He looked at me with haunted eyes. Mom, she was planning to let you die in a nursing home. But that didn't happen. I'm here. I'm safe. Because of a stranger who cared more about your welfare than your own family did. He started crying then, deep, painful sobs. I should have protected you. I should have seen what was happening. Honey, she fooled everyone, even the doctor. But I'm your son. I should have known. I held him while he cried, this grown man who'd been deceived by someone he loved. In a way, we'd both been victims. Marcus, there's something else we need to talk about, I said gently. He wiped his eyes and looked at me. Your marriage. What are you going to do? He was quiet for a long time. I can't stay married to someone who tried to kill my mother, he said finally. I filed for divorce yesterday. We sat in silence for a while, two people trying to understand how our family had been torn apart by someone we'd trusted. Mom, Marcus said eventually, can you ever forgive me? I took his hand. There's nothing to forgive, sweetheart. We both got fooled by someone who was very good at lying. But even as I said it, I knew it would take time for both of us to heal from this betrayal. Trust, once broken, doesn't repair easily. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Fallon in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed behind her back. The woman who had systematically poisoned me for months looked smaller somehow, diminished. Gone was the confident, caring daughter-in-law who had fooled everyone. In her place was someone who looked ordinary, almost pitiful. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison for attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. She would also be required to pay restitution to all her victims. There were 7 of us in total, 7 elderly people she had targeted with her scheme. Your Honor, Fallon said when given the chance to speak. I never meant for anyone to get seriously hurt. I was just trying to secure my family's future. The judge's response was swift and sharp. Ms. Hartwell, you systematically poisoned vulnerable elderly people for financial gain. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and nearly killed multiple people. The court finds no mitigating circumstances in your quest to secure your future at the expense of others' lives. Marcus sat beside me throughout the hearing, his face stoic but his hands trembling. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. He'd discovered that Fallon had been stealing from his accounts too, using his credit cards for personal purchases while claiming the debt was old. After the sentencing, Detective Santos approached us outside the courthouse. "Mrs. Hartwell, I wanted you to know that we've identified 3 more victims in other states. Your case helped us build a pattern that led to those discoveries. You speaking up probably saved lives." I nodded, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a survivor. The months following Fallon's arrest had been a journey of physical and emotional recovery. Dr. Chen had helped me safely detox from all the medications I'd been given without my knowledge. The process had been difficult,